Welcome to another Provident webinar. I'm your host, Ed Mann, Director of Training and Education. This is an exclusive webinar for our broker and agent partners across the United States. In a few moments, I'll have Rick Topping, Vice President of Ceeva, introduce himself. Given the electronic world we live in today, it seems every day there's another cyber attack somewhere in the world. While on the surface, it may seem as though those attacks are only against large corporations. However, truth be told, everybody from the individual to the small business to the very large are vulnerable to these attacks, ranging from stealing your personal information to ransomware attacks and everything in between. Rick is going to share industry best practice with you that you can use to protect yourself, your business, and your clients, better protect themselves and their organizations. I'm sure we'll have questions throughout the program, and we're asking that you use the question answer feature to send your questions, and we will attempt to have Rick answer all of them. Please note, if we can't get them all answered in our allotted time, we'll get answers to you via email in the days following the webinar. So I want to review some slides and give everybody an introduction to Provident. I would hope with the agents and brokers that are on here that you're really familiar with Provident, but just in case, I'll give you a quick refresh. If I can get my computer to do what I want it to do. So Provident's been started as an independent insurance agency in 1902 in the Pittsburgh area. And since 1928, we've been serving volunteer fire departments with customized blanket accident and health policies. Today, we provide volunteer combination and career firefighters and emergency medical responders with a multitude of programs. We also offer special risk and transportation insurance programs. Provident's been named one of the top 4 places to work by the Insurance Business Magazine 4 years in a row. Some of the programs that we offer are emergency services program, of course, our accident and health insurance program. And just as a side, anybody who has our accident and health insurance also has access to our first responder assistance program, which offers assistance for a variety of things. And I want you to know that this program is very important to me. And for those of you that deal with our clientele, please understand that firefighter suicides are outpacing line of duty deaths every year in our country. So the first responder assistance program is something very dear and near to my heart, and all of our clients and their immediate family will have access to that program. We also offer a 24-hour accidental death and dismemberment insurance policy, group term life, a critical illness and cancer policy, and of course our Provident Fire Plus property and casualty insurance. So today we have Rick from Ceeva, but before Rick introduces himself, I want to introduce our very own IT manager and business architect, Gina Spanenberg, would like to say a few words. Gina?
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this first cybersecurity webinar. I'm Gina Spangenberg, and for the past 9 years, I've been the IT director at Provident. We have taken many steps over the past 6 or 7 years or more to secure information that we use daily in our transactions with brokers and clients and claimants. We've moved to encrypt every mobile device in use, along with adding extra layers of security with the use of our virtual private network, and we've provided hotspots for our folks who travel and are sometimes subjected to the use of public wireless hubs, and sometimes that just can't be avoided. So we're always looking for ways to add extra layers of security to make sure that we're keeping our information where it should be. So for the past 6 years, we've also provided a secure link in our email signatures to allow brokers, clients, and claimants to return sensitive information to us securely. And we are starting to really advertise that more. We've always had it there. We just don't think people always scroll down and read our signature line. So it is there. We're talking about it a lot more, and it's there and it's available for your use. We apply multiple different ways of encrypting information at Providence. So we're going to great lengths to make sure this data is secure. Our latest initiative, and we're talking about in our broker newsletter, and it's really very new in the past 2 weeks, is we've created on our websites a secure upload feature, and it's allows people to either upload documents, and then as recently as last week, Sam has helped to create our first online form. It's the first notice of claim, so people can actually go online and fill out an online form for our first notice of claim and send it and submit it to us securely. And then we will handle all the signatures and everything on the back end. So there's really some great things coming down the line that we'd like to make available to all of you. Our employees are required to attend and pass a number of annual trainings on security and privacy best practices. And as part of our obligation to train our own staff, we feel an obligation to share our knowledge with all of our broker partners. So we hope that you really take advantage of these initiatives to safeguard information and to help others to do so as well. And we're always available if you have any questions on what you can do, to make this process better. In this very first cybersecurity webinar, our objective was to provide a broker-only forum to allow any of you to ask questions without clients on the line. I know in some of our other webinars, we do include both, but we purposely just wanted this for our brokers. So hopefully you will get a lot out of it today. I'm glad that you all joined. We partner with Rick Topping from Ceeva and his amazing team to make sure that we're staying ahead of the curve. There's a lot of bad actors out there trying to sabotage and get their hands on private data. We really couldn't think of anyone better to lead this discussion. So I thank you all for joining, and I'd like to turn this over to Rick. Thank you.
Thank you much, Gina. Appreciate it. Thank you as well, Ed. Thanks to everybody for taking your time out of your day to do this. I know it's not always what people want to talk about on a Monday afternoon after they potentially had a really nice weekend, but we're going to talk about some things I think that'll really hit home for you and really hope, to make you more secure. So I'm going to share my screen out here, a little PowerPoint that I have that really digs deep into some of the stuff that we're going to talk about today. While I do that, I am going to turn my camera off just not to distract you. But if I could have somebody on the Provident team, please tell me, or confirm for me that you do see my screen.
Looks good. Thanks, Rick.
Got it, Rick.
Thank you. I appreciate it. All right. So we are going to talk real life. We're going to talk about some stories. We're going to define some things. And if I'm talking too techie, put a question in the Q&A. Happy to answer anything and everything afterwards, even if we don't talk about it here. Remember, there are no dumb questions. Really, this is all what we do every day, and it's getting harder and harder every minute. So, cybersecurity awareness. What is it? Why is it important? Everything we all do in our businesses really make us all, kind of to the point where we are a technology company. Everybody's a tech company in one way, shape, or form. No matter if you want to say that I'm not a tech person or I am a tech person, everybody is a tech company. We're all emailing and sharing files. And we've got a lot of important information out of there, especially for our clientele, right? All that PII and personal information. And so what we want to talk about here is how do we protect it to make sure that you and your clientele are safe. The first thing I always ask people is what is the weakest link in your cybersecurity? And if I was in a room with people, I'd probably pick out a few people that were paying attention. I'd point at them and I'd ask them a question, what do you think it is? And I'd get answers like, well, it's my firewall, or it's my antivirus software. But the truth is, it's you, right? It's the people, it's the employee that is the weakest link in the cybersecurity. And here's why I talk about that most importantly. Where most of the, we'll call it hacking or compromise or stealing information comes from is through what's called social engineering. Social engineering uses you, the bad actors, the bad applications, the bad people use you to get information that they want. That information might be, money. That information might be credit card information. That might be, social security numbers. It could be anything, but they use you to get that information. The way that they do that is it might be email compromise, right? It might be sitting outside of your building on your Wi-Fi, not if you don't have a secure password. It might be, literally picking up a USB stick that comes in the mail. There's all these different ways for the bad actors to get information. The most common way, and we're going to focus a lot on this today, is email and email compromise, via the internet. So the first thing that these bad actors may do is to gather information from you, whether it's hacking in your email or finding another way to get information. And that information they get might just be your email address. It might be your name. They're going to use you, remember? So now if they get into your email, they're going to send information to somebody else that looks like you. So I'm sure we've all seen an email where somebody has been compromised, and you receive an email from somebody or you think asking for a wire transfer or asking for you to buy things like, gift cards. They've taken information from somebody, their email address. They've tried to develop a relationship with you, i.e. sending you an email, and then they're going to exploit that relationship. People receive those emails and they say, oh, so-and-so's in Florida, the chief operating officer is down in Florida. They need me to send them, $10,000. Wire to them. Great, I'll do that. Next thing you know, people are sending money to bad actors, or they're sending information that they asked for. That is social engineering, right? It's building trust with you via some sort of compromise, and then getting you to take an action, whether it's to share money, to share other information, and that's how that works. I mentioned a couple times about personally identifiable information, PII. That's the information they're trying to gather. It could be, again, like I said, a name. It could be your location, your address, your driver's license number, something that someone can use to identify as you. This is potentially identity theft, right? Once they get that information, that's what they're going to use. On the other side of that, this PII, this personally identifiable information, is also what we're trying to protect for our clients, right? So while we could get compromised, and our PII could get taken, what we don't want to do is have the client's information stolen along the way. And we'll talk about how that could happen as we go through some of these other, we'll call them definitions of what we're going to do. Right now, I'm going to go down a little bit of a rabbit hole to talk about some definitions of things that you hear: spam and phishing and vishing and spoofing. And we're going to talk about what each one of those are. I do want to tell a story before we get there about why keeping your information secure is so important. And this happened to me in my real life. My mother-in-law, fairly young woman, she called me from Florida, and she said, "Rick, I think I've been hacked. I think my email was hacked." And I said, "Well, why do you think your email is hacked?" She said, "Well, I'm getting calls or texts or emails from other people saying that I've sent them something, or I've requested them to send me something that I didn't do." And she's out of town, so she's got her iPad with her. And I got my laptop out and I started digging into some of her stuff. What had happened is she had a weak password on her email. And she did not have multi-factor authentication, two-factor authentication set up, which we will touch on here. And somebody guessed her password or brute forced her password into her email address. Once this person was in her email address, what they had done is they created a fake email, which was actually coming from her, sent it to all of her contact lists saying, "Hey, I'm out of town. Can you send me, 50 gift cards or 2 gift cards or whatever?" And it really came from her email address. And, that was obviously telling, and nobody sent any of the information or sent the gift cards. What happened is it allowed the bad actor to get into their email and actually set up these rules inside of her system so that when people responded back, she didn't actually see the responses. And so while the bad actors were in her email, unbeknownst to her, what they started to do was they started to use that same password to try to get into other accounts. So a lot of us use our email address to log into Amazon and Walmart.com and eBay and things like that. And I know, I'm speaking to the room, we all are really bad at using the same passwords for a lot of our stuff, right? We're all pretty bad at that sometimes. She had done the same thing for her Amazon account. So her email password and her Amazon password were the exact same thing. Next thing you know, the bad actor was at her Amazon account, ordering stuff, buying stuff, sending it to people. And then it was getting into her bank account. So over and over and over again, same username, same password, no two-factor authentication. Once we found out that this happened, thank goodness the bank called her. We were able to identify what the problem was and change her passwords and put two-factor authentication or multi-factor authentication on every single thing that she uses. That is, bar none, the easiest, best, quickest way to fix these types of problems. And again, we will get into that at the end of the first part of my slides here. So thanks for listening to my story. Moving on to some definitions. Spam, the word has been used for years and years and years. It's really just anything that you didn't ask for, right, in your email box. That is just a generalized term of something you didn't ask for. Phishing, on the other hand, is when, like I was talking about the social engineering lifecycle, phishing is when somebody or something is trying to get information from you. This screen capture here is a real information or a real email that somebody sent to me. Believe it or not, from a security company. This person had been compromised, and the bad actor got into their email, forwarded this to me. If I would have clicked on that read button down there, it would have taken me to a website where it asked for my login to Microsoft 365 to get a file. What would have happened if I was not paying attention is I would have put my username and password into that Microsoft 365 site, and I would have just given away my login if I didn't have two-factor authentication. So I actually picked up the phone and I called this Michelle. I didn't email her back. I didn't, I didn't respond. Hey, is this really you? I called her. That is absolute best practice. If you get an email from somebody that is asking you for something you didn't ask for, is sharing something with you that you didn't expect to get, pick up the phone and call them, because chances are they were hacked, they were compromised, and you reply back, you're going to get a reply back from a bad actor, not the real person. Another situation, phishing, kind of going down the same road here, be really, really careful about where the email comes from. This is, we'll call it a spoof and a phish. This person or this system here was trying to get information from this gentleman named John. You can see up here at the top where it says from Lloyd's Bank, no reply at youraccount-alerts.com. That section right there that says your account-alerts.com is the really, really, really important part. That's the part that actually, we're going to call it the domain, right? So that part there, I think I can highlight it. Maybe I can, maybe I can't. That is the most important part. When a company creates a domain, Ceeva.com, Provident Insurance, whatever it may be, they own that domain. They can create email addresses at that domain. Joe Smith at Ceeva.com, Joe Smith at whatever.com. You really, really, really need to make sure that it is coming from the real place. It's coming from the real customer, because what's in front of that, in this particular email here, you see where it says Lloyd's Bank. That's just a name. That's not an email address, that's a name. And anybody in the world, believe it or not, can set up a fake email, anything at gmail.com, 478-275@gmail.com, but they can make the name say whatever they want. And that's really what happens is people will get these emails and it'll say a name that they're familiar with, but they don't look, they don't look deeply at the email address. And it just says Lloyd's Bank or Joe Smith. And they click through the email, they click on the links and they reply back, and they're not realizing they're not really replying to the real email address. That is phishing, and that is spoofing. Let's get this one here. Moving on down to Vishing. You may not have heard of this term, but I'm sure it's happened to you or somebody you know. This is voice phishing. I'm sure you've all gotten the call on your cell phone that says, your car warranty is about to expire, or this is the IRS, you're owed money, or you owe money, or you got a call at work and it says, this is Microsoft, your computer is hacked. That's voice phishing. What they're trying to do is exactly what we just talked about with trying to get information from you on a digital level. They're trying to get you to allow them to get on your computer, or on your phone, and they're trying to get you to send them money, or when they get on your computer, they will actually infect your computer. What will happen when this quote unquote Microsoft calls you, which they will not actually call you, they'll get on your computer, they'll infect it with something, and then they'll tell you that you need to pay them to remove the infection. That is terrible. I mean, that's absolutely horrible, but it happens to people all the time. When they're putting in, these infections on your machine, a lot of times they're trying to steal important data. They're trying to take financial data. They're trying to take customer data. And while they have the software they put on the computers, they're pulling data out of your organization and you don't even know it. My best practice here is if somebody calls you to ask you about a technical thing when it comes to work, if it's not your IT person, IT people, or IT company like Ceeva that works for you, don't do anything. And the same thing for your home life. Microsoft is never going to call you at your house and tell you that your computer is infected. That is just never, ever going to happen. Moving over here, this is one of my favorite things as it happens the most, and people need to know the most about it. And I touched on this earlier, CEO spoofing. This is one of the things, and this happens in larger companies, but it also happens in smaller companies. Again, when we're talking about the name of the email, the name that is represented on the email versus the name that is over here, or the email address that is over here, you need to be very, very careful when you're looking at emails like this. CEO spoofing happens all the time. Everybody's names are out there. First name, last name, it's out there in the wild. Facebook accounts, LinkedIn accounts, whatever. It's really easy for somebody to purchase a list of C-level names from anywhere out there. They can create emails upon emails that go out, look like it's coming from a C-level executive, asking somebody, maybe a secretary or something, to send a wire transfer. It happens all the time. It's about slowing down. It's about making sure that you are getting the email from that person. And again, if you think it's a little weird, you pick up the phone and you call them. All right, moving on to one of the, if not the most damaging, difficult to deal with, scary thing in the world of business that I've seen in the past 25 years of doing this: ransomware. You've heard it, you've seen it, you've heard it on the news, you've seen businesses get completely knocked out of business by ransomware infections. This is real. It's scary. It does happen. Ransomware is kind of a, we'll just call it a virus, right? It's a malicious piece of software that gets on a system in one way, shape, or form that blocks access, locks your files. It literally encrypts your files and folders until you pay a ransom or restore it from backups. Best practice here: have good backups, have a disaster recovery plan, have an incident response plan, and do not negotiate with terrorists. These are digital terrorists that are actually doing this, right? That's what this is. Make sure you listen to your IT people when they tell you how important it is to have good backups on-site and off-site. Not just on site, not just in a hard drive that's sitting next to your computer, but a real, true disaster recovery system. For small businesses, this is an affordable, I call it, insurance policy. It really is, to stop this from happening. This will absolutely put your business into an absolute stop state until you get this resolved. So let's talk about how it happens. Let's talk about how to stop it from happening. Let's talk about what to do if it does happen to you. One of the biggest ways that this happens is by an email, like the ones that we talked about back a couple slides, back here, just, some things you shouldn't click on. What happens is it'll take you out to a website and it'll download a little file and it'll install it on your machine, and you have no idea what's going on. You know that you're just going about your day, you're working, but the next thing you know, you open up a PDF or a Word document and it'll say, this document's corrupted, or this document's encrypted. And the next thing you see is, I'm showing on the screen here, is a folder structure that has changed from regular files into these encrypted files. And this is the kind of thing you'll notice when there's ransomware. This starts on one person's machine, and it will go out to anything that they're connected to on the network that is open from a security standpoint. It will go to your OneDrive. It'll go to your Google Drive. It'll go to your Dropbox. It'll go to your, if you have a server, it'll go to your files and folders on your server. It'll go to your databases. It'll lock everything until you either do what they asked for, which they asked for in one of these files that I showed up on the screen. They want you to pay them in Bitcoin, or you clear off the infection, which is actually fairly easy, believe it or not, and then you restore it from backups. It is a task to restore from backups. You can have the greatest backups. It's still a task. It still takes time. The most recent time that we had one of these infections, it had infected all of the workstations to the point where they were unusable, and we had to rebuild the workstations from scratch. So that took time as well, but we had their data, but we had to restore the workstations and start over. I want to turn this into another bit of a story that I had mentioned. I would talk about. I had a customer who was very thrifty, and they had a not great backup system. They were using a very inexpensive online-only backup system that was backing up their server to the cloud only. And one of the employees on a Friday afternoon had clicked on something that he should not have, went to a website, downloaded something he should not have, and it asked to install, and he said yes. There's no piece of antivirus software that's going to stop people from saying yes, but he did. And he knew he did something wrong, and he's like, you know what, I'm going to call the IT company on Monday to fix my computer, and he went home. Now, we didn't know that this happened until Monday morning when the customer called us and said, hey, we can't get into any of our files. We did a little bit of remote work, and we saw that their files had all been encrypted. We were able to trace back to this one gentleman's machine. It took 3 days to get their files and folders back from their online only inexpensive backups. They sent us 6 DVDs of their data, and it was ugly, but we got them back up and running in 3 business days. There's a couple kind of lessons to learn from that. One is, if you do something, tell somebody, turn your system off, tell somebody, and make sure you do have a good backup. Make sure you do have good backups. Even if you're saying to yourself, well, I'm all in the cloud, I don't have to worry about this. You do need to make sure that that you have backups of your Microsoft 365 or your Google apps or whatever you may be using. Having that stuff in Google Drive or Microsoft OneDrive or SharePoint, you only get a certain amount of retention with those. So make sure you have some sort of a good backup for that via an IT company that you may work with. Protection. Some of the protection that we talked about today, I've mentioned it a few times: multi-factor authentication, 2-factor authentication, whatever you'd like to call it. When you log into a website, a bank, a financial institution, your Amazon account, anything, and it says, hey, do you want to set up 2-factor authentication? And you want to set text login? Yes. Don't say, ask me later. Say yes. Say absolutely yes. This is a fantastic way of ensuring that nobody can get into your accounts except for you. It is absolutely top of mind to get this on your email. Number one, first and foremost, if you don't have 2-factor authentication in your email, you should set it up immediately, or have your IT team set it up for you immediately. This is absolutely where we see the most compromise. And while it might be a little bit painful at first to set it up, once it's set up, it's easy, it's simple. You pick up your phone, you answer a text message, or you click yes, depending on how you have it set up. It's really great. There are even some websites and companies now that are doing what's called passwordless logins. It is a form of multi-factor authentication. You do go to their website and it says, put your login in, and it asks you, instead of to put a password in, it says, what's your cell phone? So you can get a code, a one-time code to get into your website. So there's a lot of different ways out there to do it, but this is really, really the way to protect you as much as possible from getting hacked. Moving away and on from this type of thing, let's talk about working from home, or working from anywhere for that matter. Let's talk about security. So first and foremost, how are you going to get connected to the internet? Because most of us are in some way, shape, or form cloud-based, right? And we have our laptop out in the field or at our house. We need to make sure that we get connected to have fast internet to get to our applications and our websites and our files. you want to make sure that you are connecting to a secure wireless network. And that secure wireless network, when you bring it up on your PC or your Mac, is going to show, most of the time, it's going to show a little lock. That means it is secure. There is a password on it. This is just an example of something I can see from my office. I snagged it and put it in here. The two things at the top are from our company. One's for the business and one's for guests. We have passwords on it, deep passwords that encrypt your traffic. The only times, and this is kind of a little bit more modern, you're going to see some without locks nowadays. And this is a little bit hard to explain only because your computer doesn't tell you that. I'm sure we've all been at a hotel or on an airplane or somewhere like a hospital or something like that, where you click on it, you join the network, and then it takes you to a website. So you prove who you are before you can log in. That's also secure. There's a couple of ways that companies do that. Sometimes there's a piece of technology in the back end that just says, put your room number in here and put your last name if you're in a hotel. But there are other things like at hospitals, they're doing what's called beacon wireless. So it tells how close you are physically to those wireless devices to allow you to get in there. When you do connect, you're going to see something similar to this, especially if you're on a Windows device. If you're out somewhere in public and you get this message, do you want to allow other PCs to be discoverable on your network, essentially? Do you want to be able to talk to other computers? Well, if you're in the public, the answer is no. By saying yes to this, it's not going to compromise the fact that you have a password on your computer, but it is going to allow things to be more discoverable, especially if you have a printer that you're shared out or something like that. But it's just important, I would say, if you are in public, to say no. If you're at home, on the other hand, I think you want to do this, right? If you want to make sure that you can print to different places across the network, this is okay to have on at home. Home is an interesting thing. I see a lot of people that have business-based computers that they take home or they leave at home and they let their kids play on their work computer. And I think that's a big mistake. You can get a tablet or a Chromebook for less than $200 these days. There's no reason that you should be having your child on your work computer, to download a Roblox or play Minecraft or whatever it may be. There's no reason for that. You're just asking for trouble. I've seen people lose work-based files. I've seen people, accidentally have, icons deleted and files deleted because their kids were using the computer, not nefariously, but because they're kids. I think it's really, really important that you don't use a shared computer at the house. If you have to, if you're using your home computer and you are using it for work, set up a separate username for your family. I think that's really important for you to do that. Every single computer, whether it's a Mac or the PC, can actually have the ability to have multiple logons to those computers that segregate your files and folders, your own desktop, your own files, your own everything. It's really easy to do. You just go to your settings menu and you look at the user section, you create yourself another user. You don't need to be super technical. But I would suggest segregating that because a lot of the world of work and home is kind of merging together. I kind of skipped ahead and that was my fault. I'm going to back up to remote access VPN. Some folks use VPN, virtual private network. Some folks do not. The interesting thing about the word or the phrase VPN is now it's become a little bit more commonplace in public. People are talking about VPN for their home, for getting access to television that they normally would not have access to. I know that there are a lot of people that do that for sports. If you're local and sometimes your games don't sell out, then you can't watch them on television, you get a blackout. We're not talking about that specific kind of VPN. What we're talking about today is a virtual private network that gets access to where your data is for your business. So a lot of people have data in different places. You can have a server in your office. You have a server in your data center. You can have your data in Microsoft 365. You can have your data in Google Apps. You can have your data anywhere. If you have your data on a server, whether it's in your office or whether it's in somebody's data center, and you need to get access to that, you should have a VPN. If you're in your main office, you can connect your office to your remote site. with a firewall or something like that. But if you are working remotely from home, from a Starbucks, from a wherever, you should be using some sort of remote access VPN if you are accessing files and folder data or application data located on a server in your office. All right. To kind of piggyback on that, when you are using remote applications like VPN, you should still have multi-factor authentication to get to that data, to get connected to your VPN. Having two-factor authentication is something you can set up for VPN. Again, it's another layer. It's another, as I call it, sandbag of stacking it to make sure you are as secure as possible. Just to kind of circle back on the working from home with a shared computer. Again, when you're done working with your work files, it's absolutely important to log off when you're done or shut that computer down. Don't let it on. Don't leave the screen open. Don't leave things logged in. Anybody can walk over to it if you don't do that, and, potentially make a mistake or lose data or have something stolen. Last but not least, for remote access, working from public places. I'd mentioned a Starbucks a few minutes ago, or a Panera Bread or anything like that. I know this sounds obvious, but I want to just toss it out there into the universe. That's not the kind of place you want to be doing payroll. That's not the kind of place you want to be doing financial things, right? It's just not. You never know who's looking around the corner. You never know who's there waiting for you to do something like that. They call this tailgating. There's a term called tailgating. You'll see that in the wild. People steal data just from sitting behind you, or maybe recording your screen from a cell phone. There's no piece of technology that's going to stop you from having that happen if you are wide open with your laptop. You know what I mean? So just be really, really careful about that. More safety with I think I'm skipping ahead. More safety when you're using your computer, whether it's at the office, remotely, or even at home. Antivirus. There's a lot of different terms nowadays for antivirus software. What most people know it as antivirus. It could be called endpoint protection. There are even some more technology, higher pieces called endpoint detection and response, EDR, but every computer should have some form of antivirus on it. The great news now are that Windows computers are a lot more secure out of the box. Windows 10, Windows 11, really secure. Microsoft has their own security suite in there. While I would say that it's really, really good, a centrally managed piece of this is kind of expensive. So for a small business and most businesses, I still think you should have a third-party piece of software that a company like a Ceeva or somebody like that controls and manages for you and is handling alerts that come into your computers. There are plenty of free ones out there from the personal standpoint. There's a Bitdefender, there's AVG, Avast, there's plenty of free ones. So always look for those out there in the wild, and just be careful you don't really have to pay for anything. I tell people that from a personal perspective all the time. People will see that their computer comes with a 6-month subscription to maybe like a Norton antivirus or something like that. And after 6 months, they want you to pay, $100 for the year or $200 for the year. I oftentimes tell people, uninstall that and go get something free. It will do the job for you, and it won't kill you from a dollars and cents standpoint. From a business standpoint, you want to have some sort of centrally managed antivirus or endpoint detection system with your managed IT services provider. Updates. I see a lot of people always saying, remind me later, tell me later. Whether it's on your phone, your Mac, your PC, run your updates. Updates happen for a reason. They're there for security. They're there for patching, that somebody found a hole in something that needs to be patched. Updates are really, really important. Where it gets to be a little bit more challenging are upgrades, right? When you move from version 1 to version 2, or version 10 to version 11, that gets to be a little bit more challenging, especially when you have an aging device. If you've got a device that's older, your systems are going to start to tell you, hey, your computer can't handle this. Even your phone, your iPhone, your Android, hey, your device can't handle this. It's not going to work. both Mac, PCs, everybody's gotten a lot better about not forcing updates that don't fit for a machine. So run those updates, do your reboots. It's going to be really, really helpful in the long run to do that and more secure. I would say that if you are working with an IT services provider, like somebody like us, they're going to manage your updates most of the time. They should be managing your updates most of the time. That does not mean that if you go and run your updates yourself, you won't have any. Updates come out every week, tons of them, sometimes in the middle of the week, sometimes at the end of the week. There's always going to be more updates. So I guess what I'm saying is if you work with a company and you run updates and you think to yourself, well, heck, why are these not already run? You can only get so much done in a day. You can only get so much done at a time. So my point is run updates. If you have questions about how those are scheduled with your IT company, ask them. I'm sure they'll have a good answer for you. Internet browsing safety. This is some of the stuff that I touched on earlier. I think it's really, really important to think about this. I mean, a lot of this is old hat, of course, but using the internet safely, purchasing stuff really is what it comes down to when you want to spend money. Make sure that you know where you are on the internet. And what I mean by that is I see a lot of people that use Google as your navigation. And what I mean by that is when somebody wants to go to Amazon, they go to Google and they type the word Amazon into Google as opposed to just going up to the address bar and typing in Amazon.com. Here's why I say that it's a little bit risky. Google's great. Google's a big company. They do a really, really good job of giving you the results that you are asking for. But sometimes, just sometimes, I'm sure you've all seen this, you search for one thing and the top 3 things, the top advertisements are something else. That has absolutely happened to me. I'll tell you a story. I was looking for a company that did some tile work at my house and I searched for the company's name and I called the first phone number on the top. And I called them and it was the wrong company because they paid more money in advertising dollars than the other company. What the lesson that I learned there was take my time or go directly to their website. Go to the whatever.com to land there, to live there, to make sure that that is the right place to be. It is easy to find yourself at a place where you are a little bit scared to purchase something, putting a credit card in, something like that. My advice is purchasing something online, do it from the big sites, the Amazons of the world, the Walmarts of the world, even the eBays of the world. And frankly, it's a little bit easier and more secure to do it from your phone. You have an app, an Amazon app or a Walmart app or a Costco app or whatever it may be. Going to that app on your phone, you're already logged in. It's already you. You're already secure. You're not going to a miscellaneous, website in a browser. Now, that might not work for everybody. I get that. The screens are small. I completely get it. But if you are using your computer and your full-size screen and your web browser, whether it's Chrome or Firefox or Edge, make sure, or Safari, make sure that you're going to the actual website. And on the top left, you have one of these little locks. That's going to tell you that website is who they say that they are, and then they've applied what's called an SSL certificate to prove that they are secure and that they are who they are. Obviously, shopping is a hot topic, and that's where I find a lot of people searching for things that are getting their computers infected, whether it's looking for coupons or looking for something on a sale, looking for a coupon code. I tell people if you find something that's free or you find something that doesn't seem right, it's probably too good to be true. Nothing is free. You've got to be very, very careful what you click on because search results might look legitimate, but typically, they aren't, especially if you're looking for something for free. But also, and this kind of circles back to if you make a mistake to talk about it, and I'm going to finish up really shortly after this, it is okay to make a mistake. It is okay to click on something every once in a while that maybe you weren't sure about, but if you don't tell anybody, and if you make the mistake of going home, like the gentleman I talked about earlier, and you get your entire network infected or your whatever it may be, you're going to feel a whole heck of a lot worse than if you go and tell somebody, your IT company, your boss, whatever. I think I clicked on something I shouldn't have. I think I downloaded something I shouldn't have. Can you help me out? if you think you did that and you're really worried about it, unplug your computer, hold the button, turn it off. Worst case scenario, you broke one computer, not all of them. That's what I tell everybody. If you unplug it from the network, or you get it off the wireless, or you unpull the power plug out, or hold the power, that is much better than the opposition. And I saved this story for last because it's very telling of kind of the world that we live in. Mistakes get made, right? And I made a mistake without even knowing it a few years ago. I was trying to buy something for my wife around Christmas time. And I went to Reebok's website, Reebok.com. We all know who Reebok is, right? Their website was infected with something. They had gotten compromised, and their website was pushing out bad stuff to all the computers of people who landed on their website. It completely infected my web browser to the point where I could not even use it anymore, and I had to rebuild my entire workstation just because I went to a website. I did literally nothing. I clicked on nothing. Their website was infected. Their website was compromised. Now, I don't want everybody's employees using that kind of thing as an excuse, but it's one of those situations where it was out of my control. And if I was at work and I wasn't techie, I would tell somebody. I would reach out and say, hey, this happened. I'm just trying to protect our data. I'm trying to protect the company's data. I'm trying to protect our customers' data. It's always better to tell somebody when you think you've had a cyber issue. That being said, I think I've gotten through anything that I needed to get through at the moment. I think we want to open this up to Q&A. I'm going to toss it back over to the Provident team. Thank you all.
Okay, Rick, thanks for a great presentation today. Let's see if we have any questions in the Q&A. You've done so well, we don't have any questions. Let's see if there's anything, no questions in the chat that I can see. But back to the comment you made earlier about email. This weekend, I received an email from an individual with a national organization I work with. The email address was legit, but the email said, I need to pay this bill immediately. Please give me your information. And so I emailed the guy and said, hey, I think you've been hacked. And yeah, he was hacked. All right. But the email address was legit. But the information in the email was like, okay, hold on a minute. One, I don't owe them any money. And two, he wouldn't be asking me for this information to begin with.
Yeah, it's pretty wild, like what happens. It couldn't be more timely. Like my guys, I'm looking at my people in my office. They're actually dealing with this right now with a customer who got compromised last week and didn't tell us till today. We started asking them questions. Same situation. Somebody's email got compromised. What actually happens here is, like I said, you don't know it because everybody who's using Microsoft 365 or any sort of web-based email, there is a website you can go to get your email, office.com or outlook.com. And if I'm a bad actor, right, and I log into, office.com and go to your email address, email box, you have no idea that I'm there, right? Unless you have some sort of, geo protection turned on, which is a thing, but you have no idea that I'm there. So I'm a bad actor. And what I'm doing is I'm preparing to send those emails out that you received, Ed, to all my contacts, all the contacts that are in there. And what I'm also doing is I'm going into the rules of Microsoft Outlook or whatever it may be and saying, if I receive an email back from these things, don't put it in the inbox, automatically delete it. And I'm seeing people do that all the time. So the people are just working around their day, they're just doing their thing and they have no idea. They're none the wiser about what's happening in the background. That's why it's so important to have strong passwords and two-factor authentication.
So a question I have for you, Facebook is notorious for quizzes coming up all the time. And they ask you, like, what was the first car you owned? What year did you graduate? Who was your first girlfriend? That kind of stuff. Is that somebody that's hunting for information so they can crack what your, the security questions that you put on a website somewhere? Are those these social engineering people trying to gather enough information to break into your account?
Well, I mean, it's short answer, yes. Right. But what are they social engineering you for? A lot of the times it's to sell you something, right? They're getting information about what you like so they can give you that next advertisement when you're scrolling through your Facebook feeds. You buy the next set of shoes or you buy that next thing that you're looking for. But there are bad guys out there, there are bad actors out there that are putting those quizzes out there. Who was your favorite band or whatever it is, to get that information, to do brute force hacks into these accounts. My belief is that, and there's a lot of belief flying around. My belief is that really that's used for more of advertisement and to get information from you to sell you more stuff.
Okay. All right. So one other go ahead, Gina.
Well, one thing, Rick, that you mentioned, which I appreciated, was talking about taking updates. The other thing that I kind of wanted to piggyback on a little bit was talking about when things go out of support, like, for example, operating systems. When we had Windows 7 going out of support, we had a lot of computers in-house that still worked and were perfectly good. And we had to upgrade. Some of them were not upgradable, and when we upgraded, we bought new equipment for everyone at that time. But the point is, when these operating systems go out of support, what that also means is that security companies are not updating security software to support things like Windows 7. So it's really important that you're not on these old versions, of operating systems, because your malware or antivirus protection may only protect you for what was in place when that operating system was being supported. And so I thought you might want to touch on that a little bit, Rick, because it is hard when you have I've had people say to me, well, this laptop still works. There's nothing wrong with it.
Yeah, I mean, that's really important. And it's not even, I'm going to piggyback on your piggyback. It's important for the hardware, right? In the operating system. It's also important for software. Like, I can't tell you the amount of people that say, I don't want to buy another version of Microsoft Office. I'm fine on Office 2003, whatever the number is. Oftentimes applications are the entryway for hacking, right? Some sort of an open hole, a security hole in Microsoft Office or whatever. I'm just throwing it out there. Those are the same things. When they're out of support, they're out of support. They're not getting more updates. They're not getting more security patches. They are what they are. When somebody comes to you and says, hey, you've got to spend some money, you've got to upgrade your software, here's why, and security is number one, you probably should listen.
Right. And the other thing that I wanted to mention is all the different examples that you mentioned of the way that people try to come in. We've had them all. And we're at the point now where, our users will not click on an email or an attachment and without saying like, hey, does this look okay? It looks weird to me, And so people have been trained, and you kind of have to get used to looking at, like you mentioned, the domain names. Like, if something doesn't come from @providentins.com, I'm like, it's not us, that is not coming from our internal person, even though it looks like spoofing, So we do get those as well. We're really careful. And people always say, well, I hate to bother you about this. It's really not a bother. I'd rather them take that time, notify us. Let's have a look at it, make sure it looks okay. Sometimes it's hard to tell. And I always say to people too, like you mentioned, call the person. If this is not something you recognize, call the person, make sure that it's actually from them, that they actually sent it. And I'd say 8 times out of 10, it's not, always call the person and don't feel the need to just respond because it comes from somebody important or somebody that you normally deal with. Take that time to take a look at things. We have people now in our organization that just won't even, click on something. We received a USB drive from a broker and nobody would plug that into their machine. Thank God. I was super happy about that. I'm like, thank you very much. But that's where we are now. And that's the world that we live in. And it's better to be safe than sorry. So
Rick, we don't have a question per se, but there is a comment from Benjamin Romo. Not a question, but I hope Provident will look into supporting UB keys for 2FA. I have no idea what that is. I hope one of you two know what he's talking about.
UBK. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I can't answer what your software is going to support, but YubiKeys would be essentially the flash drive of authentication.
Oh, I see.
I don't think at this point, I don't think that's a supported thing at the moment.
That's, yeah, we're not at the moment anyway. We're not saying never. I guess it's just, we're offering a lot of different ways to get information to us, and, that's not currently one of them.
Benjamin, what I would suggest is maybe you drop us an email and I'll give you an email address with a better explanation. We'll get it to Gina. Gina can research it and give you a better answer. Because they have an idea what you're talking about. I don't have a clue. That's why we have computer experts on here today.
Absolutely. And feel free to reach out to us, Benjamin, or reach back out to Ed, and he'll route that appropriately, and we can look into that request. Thank you.
So I do have a comment for the agents and brokers that are on here. Just so you know, through our property and casualty insurance, we do offer cyber coverage. And we typically, one of the questions on the questionnaire is for the application is does the applicant have cybersecurity policies in place? And what I will tell you is in most cases, the answer to that question is no. I've developed some cybersecurity policies that I can provide, more than happy to provide to an agent that can give to a client so they can incorporate them. Rick, what I may very well do is send them to you so you can take a look at them. And since I'm not an IT person, you can look at them and say, hey, these are, I basically did a search and just put three separate policies together that we could provide to potential clients that currently didn't have any cyber policies in place. So I wanted to mention that while we were still on. I don't see any more questions. So Rick, again, I want to thank you for a very informative presentation and thank our broker and agents for being with us today. If you want to learn more about Ceeva, you can visit their website at www.ceeva.com, Ceeva.com. There it is on Rick's shirt. Or you can contact Rick at rtopping@Ceeva.com. To our broker agents and partners, today was the first webinar exclusively for you. If you have any ideas or suggestions for future webinars or podcasts, just for brokers or our agents, drop us an email at info@providentins.com. For those of you who registered for the webinar, we will email you a link to the website. We will also be uploading this presentation to our Provident YouTube page if you'd like to watch it again or share it. As a reminder, there'll be a very short 5-question survey at the end of the program. Please take time to complete it. This wraps up another Provident webinar. Please stay tuned for upcoming webinar and podcast. On May the 16th at 7 p.m., I'll host a roundtable discussion with AJ Heitman, J.R. Henry, and Steve Worth when we'll discuss the national issues facing emergency medical services. Until then, stay healthy and stay safe.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.